The whole town's batting about Cincinnati. What a team, what a team, what a team. Each man and lady from 1 to 80, how they scream, how they scream, how they scream.
Hello, Reds fans, and welcome to another edition of We Love Our Team. Today, we are honored to welcome Lakshmi Sammarco. Dr. Sammarco is the Hamilton County Coroner. That might be a metaphor for the Reds 2024 season, but we'll skip over that. Dr. Sammarco was born in India, came to the United States when she was 6 years old. She grew up in Milford and attended Cincinnati Country Day School. She attended the Clifton Elementary School and Cincinnati Country Day, where she graduated early at age 17. She then entered the University of Cincinnati College of Engineering as their youngest student to have been granted a junior position. After only 2 years, Dr. Sammarco was offered admission into the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine, where she completed her medical degree in 1988. At age 24, she was the youngest student in her class. Dr. Sammarco completed her residency in diagnostic radiology at Case Western Reserve University. In 1995, she completed a 2-year accredited fellowship in neuroradiology at the University of California, Los Angeles. That's one of the most prestigious neuroradiology fellowships in the world. During this time, Dr. Sammarco was involved in the development of many of the minimally invasive procedures to treat strokes, aneurysms, and cancers of the brain and spine currently used today. She's currently a senior member of the American Society of Neuroradiology. Dr. Sammarco is a trailblazer. She has accomplished these first: the first female coroner in Hamilton County, the first radiologist elected coroner in Ohio, the first Asian American elected in Hamilton County, and the first working mother elected in Hamilton County. Dr. Sammarco, welcome to We Love Our Team.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You know, it was I was thinking about, so, you know, I grew up in Clifton for a while before we moved to Milford, and I did come here when I was 6, and it was interesting because I think there were probably only a couple of us Indian kids in my class, and I was friends with the other girl who lived around the corner from us in an apartment in Clifton. And we used to walk to and from school, you know, in those days when you could walk a mile and a half, just a group of kids, and not worry about somebody snatching your kid on the road. And we used to walk by the Annunciation School, you know, which was a parochial school, a Catholic school, and to get to our public school. But it was some great memories, you know, just some great memories growing up in Cincinnati.
Hey, well, my understanding is you flew by yourself at the age of 6 from Bombay to Cincinnati.
Yeah, actually, that was another one of those things that, you know, you can't really do anymore as a 6-year-old. Right. I just remember, so my parents came to the United States 2 years before, and they brought my 2-year-old brother with them at the time. And the plan was that my dad was just going to do a residency 3 years at the Jersey City Medical Center, and then he was going to go back to India. So, you know, at age 4, they didn't want to interrupt my education. And so they left me in India with my uncle's family, my dad's brother's family, and I had 3 essentially older siblings, and we're still very close. I was the kid that they would pick on because I was the youngest. But then when my grandfather lived with us, you know, and that's kind of, it's an Indian tradition to have the elders live in your household, and I think it's an awesome tradition. I mean, I think it's one of those things that we've kind of lost sight of in this country. And because, you know, the previous generation has so much to offer, so much in the way of guidance, so much in the way of also helping raise the younger generation, the next generation. And, you know, in this day and age with 2 parents working, it's just wonderful to have another set of eyes and another set of hands and feet and so forth, you know, helping out with the kids. And we've been really fortunate. And one of the reasons that we can talk about this later, but one of the reasons we returned to Cincinnati after our training is because I wanted that for my children. You know, I wanted them to have my parents nearby to help. And honestly, I think my daughter would tell anybody that her grandmother raised her because I was, keeping such long hours in my career and my husband, and we couldn't have done it without my parents. But it's one of those things. So when I came to this country, and my uncle, we had this long train journey from Hyderabad to Bombay at that time. And I remember him putting me on a plane, and it was one of those planes where he had the 4 seats in the middle and 2 seats and 2 seats and 2 aisles. And I remember walking down the plane and getting put on the right side next to a young woman, and my uncle handing off all the paperwork and everything to the air hostess. And this was at a time when you'd have 2 stops on the way to the United States. And there was someplace in Europe that we stopped, and I can't remember where that was. But we had a deplane in London, in Heathrow.
Oh, wow.
And I remember the air hostess coming, and stewardess at that time, and grabbing me by the hand, and we had to deplane while they cleaned the plane and then get back on, and landing at JFK. And my parents weren't there. And mind you, I was 6. I hadn't seen my parents in 2 years. I'd seen photographs. There were rare, very rare phone calls because it was so expensive.
Yeah.
But my grandfather, who lived with us at the time, my dad's father, firmly believed that children belong with their parents. And he kept sending letters to my parents saying, "You need to come get your kid." So when they realized that they were going to move to Cincinnati, and my dad switched from internal medicine to psychiatry in a different residency, that they were going to be here longer, they sent for me. So I remember sitting next to this lady and getting off the plane in JFK, and somebody, the stewardess handing over through immigration, handing over my paperwork to this man I'd never seen before in my life, who was another Indian man. But handing everything over, and me, and I had 2 pigtails, and he tells the story. This is my godfather, and he tells the story dragging me through JFK, kicking and screaming and biting him. Apparently,
oh my gosh,
I didn't know who he was, and I didn't want to go with him, and until and he spoke the same language I did. I spoke 3 languages at the time, including English, but the language I grew up with is Telugu. And so he spoke Telugu too, and then he said I wouldn't calm down until he named my parents by name and said that I could call them, and took me back to their apartment in New York, because there wasn't a connecting flight until the next day. And so I was able to talk to my parents, and then the next day got on a TWA flight, if you remember those days.
Yeah.
And did not have a jetway for that at CVG. They had, steps, and I remember standing at the top of the steps and looking down, and there were my parents and my little brother holding a little Barbie doll with a fuchsia pink dress and bright red hair, and I still have that doll.
Oh, fantastic.
And waiting for me. So that was my first day in the United States, in Cincinnati.
So tell us about how your Reds fandom developed once you got to the States.
So, I didn't know anything about baseball. And, my dad grew up with cricket in India. But first grade at the Clifton Elementary School, the Reds had the straight A program at that time. Mm-hmm. And I remember getting 2 seats for 3 games to the Reds at Riverfront Stadium. And, my parents had never even been to Riverfront. My dad was a resident. My mom was a stay-at-home mom at the time. And we lived in a little apartment in Clifton. And I don't think we could have afforded tickets, really. I mean, if this hadn't been an opportunity. And so I remember Dad taking me to the Reds game. We had a little dark green VW Bug. And I remember going to the game and sitting in the, way up there in the nosebleed section, the 500 section, and just thrilled to be in this massive stadium with all these people screaming around me, and not knowing much about the game or anything, but just the experience was just amazing, for a kid like me. And my dad, he'd never been to a baseball game before. That was his first baseball game as well. So
yeah, I mean, So did either of you really understand the rules or anything much, or no?
No, and there was no asking my dad because he didn't
Right.
really. But the people next to us were great. They I think they just loved. I don't think I sat down. I think I stood the entire time,
That's
uh,
awesome.
and screaming when everybody else around me was screaming, and clapping when everybody else around me was clapping. But so how it started, we had 3 games. We had 3 games, but I could only go to 2 because my parents made me share my 3rd game with my little brother, who didn't make the straight A ticket.
Well, I don't know much about cricket, but I think there's some similarities between cricket and baseball, right? Or do you know
There's
anything about
runs.
cricket? Could you explain that to our audience? Are there
There
similarities?
are some similarities. I mean, obviously the field is very different, but there's somebody pitching or bowling as they call it, and there's somebody hitting, and then there's running between the wickets, which is like running the bases and getting runs that way, and that's why you see so many runs at the cricket games. But there's big differences. There's overs, and then there's you get so many runs for how far you hit the ball. You get so many, and so it's really different, a little bit different than us. I mean, obviously we get a run when we get hit it over or a run around the bases, but so there are some similarities. But the cricket games can go on for over a day, not just one day. And I actually last year I was in India, and my cousin in Hyderabad, one of the cousins I grew up with there, was in charge of the World Cup games that were in Hyderabad. So I was fortunate to be able to attend one of those games, and actually one of my friends from Australia flew out to visit my family with me. So the 2 of us got to attend a World Cup game, cricket in India and Hyderabad, and the atmosphere is just it's thrilling, it's exciting, it's very different, and they're really into their cricket. I mean, they're passionate about their cricket. And wish I could have gone to the India-Pakistan game, but on the other hand, I'm kind of glad I didn't because there's really nasty rivalry there. So
Yeah, I can imagine. Can imagine. So that's funny. You had to share your straight A tickets with your brother. I remember that reminds me of when in 1970 that I have 5 sisters, but 3 were living out of the house. So it was myself and my 2 sisters and my mom and my dad. And my dad got 4 tickets for the World Series game.
wow.
So there were 5 of us, and we decided the only fair thing to do would be draw names, and that was great until my name wasn't drawn, and
Oh,
then
Oh,
I threw a
poor
complete
Jack.
fit. And my mom, being what a great mom she was, she decided that I could go instead of her. So
oh, moms, what they give up,
moms, they're the best. They're the
they're the best.
best.
Well, doctor, how do these cricket? Sorry, Jack. I want to get back to cricket a little bit. I don't know anything about cricket other than we occasionally have some around our house. How in the world do they last more than one day? I mean, baseball fans, they get antsy when it's more than 3 hours.
Yeah, I know, but and the fans come and go. It's not like they come and stay for the entire thing. And when the game that I attended, the stands were kind of half empty because it started in the afternoon, but by the time rush hour happened and people were out of work and out of their office hours, the stands would fill. And then as the game went on, and we ended up leaving because it was continuing to go on for so long, people would leave and then come back. And so I think there's a certain number you have to be. You have to play, and then there has to be between your team and the next team. And I don't know all the rules to cricket. I was still looking at my cousin and my cousin's kids going, okay, what's happening here? Right? Why did they do that? And wait, how come they got 4 runs on that one? What happened here? So I was still learning it too because I didn't really know the rules of cricket when I came to the U.S. either. So I'm still learning. I did wake up really early in the morning to watch the India versus Australia final, which was very disappointing because the Indian team was completely undefeated the entire World Cup until that last game. And I think I don't know what happened. They got tired.
Oh no, we
But
had
they
a
did win
guy.
this year. They did win this year. which was pretty amazing. And I don't know if you
right.
saw any of the shots of the Indian cricket team coming back, and the millions, and I mean millions, of people on the streets in Mumbai and surrounding the bus, the team bus as they were going through. That was pretty amazing.
We had a guy that played on our lawyer league softball team, and I think he was from Jamaica originally, and so he had played a lot of cricket, and he didn't like to wear a glove. We sort of insisted that he should wear a glove, but he didn't like wearing it. So he'd play the outfield, and before he'd catch the ball, like throw the glove off and catch the ball.
They barehand everything, right?
Right.
I mean, you know that. And these little cricket balls are smaller, and they're really hard, and they come at you, and you want to let it bounce before it hits your hand,
Yeah, it was pretty funny watching him play.
Yeah.
Also, his swing was almost like a golf swing almost, because I think it's the pitches in cricket or the bowling in cricket is low, so he would like go. It was fun. It was an interesting kind of cultural. So I don't mean to date you, Doctor, but when was that first game? Do you remember?
It was 71. Spring.
Oh, okay. So Big Red Machine.
Yeah, getting there. So great memories. I know we were kind of talking before about it, but man, watching the Big Red Machine 75 and 76, that sealed the deal for us. For
sure.
It's me and my little brother.
Did you have a favorite player back then?
I think my favorite player of all time has always been Pete Rose. It's always
there. You go, Jack.
Because truly, he represented the heart of baseball. Was a local kid, loved it. I had a friend who played baseball in Hershey, Pennsylvania, who'd tell me he'd slide into second and it tasted like chocolate. He'd eat the dirt and it tasted like chocolate. I'm like, well, I don't know if our farm dirt in Cincinnati tastes like chocolate, but Charlie Hustle certainly ate enough of it. What a great guy, and what a great example of just the love of the sport, and going from player to manager, and just so much success. And I know this was one of the questions you were going to ask. I'm going to beat you to it. We'll go back to the Big Red Machine, but one of my absolute favorite, goosebump forming, and it still does give me goosebumps, moments, memories of baseball was I was a second year medical student. And, we had been studying really, really hard. And we were just getting back into school after summer break. And it was September 1985, and it was actually the end of August. We had been talking about a group of us, 16 of us. Hey, who wants to go to the Reds game? Anybody want to go? Like, yeah. So one of the other medical students, my friend Jim Schwederman, who's I think in Dayton now, but he's like, all right, I'm going to go get tickets. How many people want to go? And there were 16 of us. So he went and got tickets to September 11th.
Wow.
And just happened to be the day to get tickets, right? And leading up to that, right, those 10 days or so after he bought tickets, we're like, oh my God, Pete Rose is gonna beat Ty Cobb's record. He's gonna beat it. They were away, and then they were, we were watching. Yeah. Oh, didn't happen. Oh, wait a minute. It could happen. And then the day before, it was like, it didn't happen. And then the first inning, and we're, poor medical students sitting up in the 500 nosebleed seats, whatever. We were so excited to be at this game. And we were already standing pretty much the whole time, right? In first inning, and Pete gets up there. And I cannot tell you what that feeling was like. The entire stadium was up on its feet and screaming. It was deafening. You couldn't hear it. We had our fingers stuck in our ears. We were screaming also. But just watching that happen. And it was, a full half an hour before the resumed play. And, Pete and then Marge and the Corvette coming out, and then Pete's son coming out. And I know after the game, President Reagan calling in, and I mean, what an amazing experience. And he was so humble and so warm, and to Pete and the people of Cincinnati, and so proud of the game. And he kept saying, well, I know you got a lot of friends around you, so I'm going to let you go. And I mean, just an incredible experience. And I don't think I've ever experienced that in any sport since. And I did go to the 2022 Super Bowl in
Nice.
LA. That was heartbreaking, let me tell you. I put a note out there saying, can I sue the umpires of the NFL for really bad officiating? You know?
Really? That's great. So total fluke that you happened to be at the game, at the Pete Rose game. That's wild. Randy, were you there, Randy?
I was there, Jack, and I was going to say, I don't think our younger audience realizes how big that was. I mean, NBC cut into their normal programming. I mean, the entire country of sports fans were watching. It was like,
it was a worldwide broadcast.
You know, it's when we had our three stations, you know, NBC, ABC, CBS. We had ESPN, obviously, but it was so big that I don't know if they would ever do that, Jack, in any other sport or doctor. You know, if somebody was going to break a record in
I don't know,
the NBA or NHL.
It was almost 60-year record, wasn't it? I mean, it was almost
every bit of that. Yeah, every bit of that.
And I mean, and you know, how many records like that have been broken since? Right? I mean, not. But, you know, and Pete said it the best. He just said, you know, this is the baseball capital of the world. And having the first, you know, professional baseball team. I think everybody knows that Cincinnati is such a baseball town. I mean, not that we don't appreciate, you know, I love my FC, I love the Bengals, but at the heart of it all, really, Cincinnati loves their Reds. Yeah, loves.
Oh yeah. Well, we were watching it at home. We weren't lucky enough to have tickets, and my then 2-year-old daughter, Katie, was apparently not happy that people weren't paying enough attention to her. So just before Pete came up, she turned the TV off.
Oh no!
We were like, oh my God, turn it back on. So we got it back on in time, but you have no idea what that was like at our house. We thought, oh God, if we miss this is going to be terrible. You know. So,
that was it was an incredible experience. And you know, I had the great fortune of going to hear Steve Garvey talk a couple of years ago at the Reds Hall of Fame, and he told everybody that one of his favorite memories of baseball was being able to be the first person to shake Pete's hand when he got to first base after he hit that.
Yeah.
And he said,
he was playing for the Padres then. That's right.
Yeah. And he said that was incredible. He goes, play stopped for over half an hour, but he said that was one of his favorite memories of baseball, was being able to shake Pete's hand.
Now, Doctor, do you belong to the Wright Society?
I do. Yeah.
So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about what that is? Because I'm not sure everybody knows what. Cause it sounds pretty cool.
It is very cool. So with the Hall of Fame, there's an organization, or there's a subset called the Wright Society, and it's for people that want to have sort of those intimate moments with players, the Hall of Famers, and guests from elsewhere. And that was a Wright Society event where they brought Steve Garvey in to talk about his experience. It's a small group of people. You know, I think Wright Society is probably limited to about 100, but you know, at any particular event, there might be 40, 45, maybe 50 people. And you get to meet the players. You get to hang out with each other. You know, there's snacks and a little drink, and then there's this experience. And, you know, Pete Rose came and spoke last year. And, you know, and that was a full crowd. But I was sitting right there in front. And there aren't that many women, I think in it, but he started telling some of these stories, and you know, if you've ever heard Pete speak, he's got a few off-color jokes, and I think he made a few jokes referring to male body parts and stuff. Then he looked at me and goes, "Oh, sorry, I hope you weren't offended." And I just kind of looked at him like, "I'm a doctor and I'm a coroner. You think I haven't seen it all?" So, and then he said another one. He just kind of looked at me. I'm like, yeah, it's fine.
When I was a kid, when I was a kid, Shillitoes used to do this thing where kids could come and you'd go upstairs in this space that they had at the downtown Shillitoes, and Reds players would come and talk. And I
Yeah.
remember Pete coming to that. And I used to get hit by pitches a lot when I played knothole. I kind of crowded the plate, and I would get, and I don't know, nobody ever told me to back up. I guess they liked that I was my on base percentage was pretty good, because I get drilled by pitches. But so you got a chance to ask the players questions, and my question to Pete was, are there any pitchers that scare you? And he said, and I will never forget this, he just looks at me and goes, "Hey, I'm the one with a bat. Why should I be scared?"
That's awesome. Yeah.
I just love that answer. I'll never forget.
How about more recently? Any favorite Reds players, Doctor?
Oh my goodness. I could go on a long list. I mean, I have favorites from the 1990 World Series when I didn't live in Cincinnati and I actually lived in Pittsburgh. And,
Oh, wow.
And that was also the time the Bengals were doing really well. So I'd wear my orange and black. And those, I was told by a policeman that pulled me over for speeding that I was wearing enemy colors. And I thought, oh, great, I'm definitely going to get a ticket on this one. I had my paw gloves on and everything. But he only gave me a warning. He said, just because I was a sports fan and a football fan. But, Eric Davis, Barry Larkin, Paul O'Neill. I mean, some of the greats. And since that time, when I moved out of Cincinnati for a while, I came back and we had kids. And, we had season tickets to the Reds, including the very first game of the new stadium and everything, and moved back. And my daughter, both the kids loved baseball. My daughter was probably one of the biggest fans, and she'd wear her little pink outfit that had all the red stuff on it because it was good luck, because every time she'd go, they'd win. And I loved Adam Dunn, and she would be the kid screaming the loudest. She'd be going, bada, 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 and she would just, scream it. And several times she was up on the camera, but then she would run down to try and get a ball. And our son was 3 years younger. And he would run down, and she would run down, and they would always pitch the ball to her, and she had her little pink glove and stuff. And he's like, this is so unfair. She gets all the balls, and then she was pretty good about giving him some of the balls. But the more recently, I always loved George Foster. He's such a character, and I've seen him out and about. Just a great human being doing great things for the local kids. And he was actually supposed to come to our office last Friday for a little tour and talk to our staff, which would have thrilled them, but he wasn't feeling well. But the nasty boys from the 90s, from the World Series game. But Bronson Arroyo, Ken Griffey Jr., Brandon Phillips, all of these guys from then. More recently, a friend of mine and I had just a little baseball crush on Joey Votto, and of course Ellie De La Cruz. So last year at the Hall of Fame banquet, which is, by the way, just a fantastic event when they have it. I mean, it's just the feeling in the entire place is just so upbeat. You rarely go to a fundraiser, anything that you go to that just feels just that great, And Ellie last year, it was funny because I was like, well, who's going to be sitting at our table? Who's going to be sitting at our table? And I was like, oh, Beth and I were like, oh, Joey's sitting at my table. Oh, no, Joey's sitting at my table. We were going back and forth. And Ellie was sitting at our table. And and he came in and, he's 9 months younger than my youngest kid, my son. and he came in, he had this white jacket on and a colorful shirt and stuff. And he sat down, he brought his interpreter and we started. And he sat down right next to my husband, who happened to have a white jacket on. And the two of them were like, yeah, look, twinning, and they were hilarious, the two of them. But, because I think my husband was the only one in the entire place with a white jacket on until Ellie walked in.
That's funny.
And the two of them were having a good time, and his interpreter was there. And my husband doesn't speak any Spanish, but I do. So Ellie and I started a conversation, and the interpreter goes, "Oh, you speak Spanish? Great. I actually have to go help somebody else. Can you help out Ellie?" I'm like, Sure. you know, and we had a great conversation. He was talking about his family and how many kids there were in his family. And I said, well, you have to be lonely here by yourself. He said, yeah. And he was trying to bring his family to Cincinnati, and he loved Cincinnati. He said it was just such a great reception for him, a warm reception, and he so different. And he didn't have a car, and he walked to the stadium, for practices and for games, and he just had such a great, humble attitude. And the funny thing is, I actually have a picture of him sitting at the table when there was a little playing on his cell phone. I'm like, this is such a 20-year-old thing. I was like, I
play
can
Minecraft, right? Like,
I can see my kids doing that. And I mean, it was just such a funny thing because he's just such a sweet kid, and he really is. I mean, he's and they were and he was hungry because those guys came, they got changed and got there, and all these people coming up to take pictures with him, and he had his food sitting in front of him, and he'd barely get one cut in and a little bite, and then people would come, and I finally was just looking around, and I told my husband, I'm like, push your chair back and start, block the area a little bit so that people can't get to him, and he did. That didn't stop people.
yeah,
So
sure.
I finally got up and I stood behind my husband's chair like this. And he literally stood there. And I saw this lady get up at a table, 3 tables behind us. And then they were all talking and pointing. And I'm like, oh, yeah, here it comes. And the entire table got up and started walking over. And she walked up and she said, excuse me. And I said, no. She's like, no. And I said, I know you. She said, well, you want a picture with Elliot. I said, I understand. I said, but the poor kid just started eating and he's hungry. Can you just give him 5 minutes to get a little food in his mouth and then come back? And she's like, you're not going to move? I'm like, no, I'm really not going to move.
That's funny. That's great. So you said your kids are fans. Did you get your dad? Did he become a fan?
Oh, yeah.
Good. Okay.
Definitely a fan. He's always been a Reds fan. So
That's great.
I don't think, my dad always worked so hard. Even when I was in 8th grade, my dad had started his practice in psychiatry in Milford in 1972. And then, so we all moved out to Milford. That's how we ended up there. And, but even while he was starting his practice and building his practice, he was moonlighting at Our Lady of Mercy Hospital in Marymount when it used to be there.
Yeah.
And working in the emergency room before emergency medicine became a specialty.
Wow.
And he was getting paid. He was now a board certified psychiatrist, already finished his internship and everything. And he was getting paid $5 an hour working at night shift in the emergency room. And then in the morning, he would come home, change, take a shower, and then go and see his patients building his practice. So very hardworking people, my parents.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Wow. That's So he didn't have a whole lot of time to go sit at Reds games. I get it. Yeah, I get it. That's awesome. Did you ever play? Did you play softball or baseball or anything?
I played baseball with the neighborhood kids, and we had a backyard with no fences, so we could the next door neighbor's backyard too. So to incorporate. And I was the only girl that played. Of course, there was my brother, and then there were a couple other kids his age. There were a couple of kids a little older, and the Womicks and the Robinsons and the other people around us. And we'd play. We made the mistake of making home plate in front of the little garden shed that my dad had. And it had a little glass window.
Uh-oh.
And I was catching one day and I missed, and the ball went over my shoulder through the glass window.
Oh no.
There was a lot of unhappiness, and we had to change home plate orientation.
It was a pass ball. It sounds like.
Well, it was high.
So, doctors, as we were preparing for the podcast, I got curious about whether there have been any Indian-born major league players, and it's funny. Randy's part of this group that I send a trivia question out every day, and lately I've been doing foreign-born players, and there are no. I did not see. Apparently, there have not been any Indian-born major league players, which surprised me a little bit, just because I realized baseball is not a big thing in India, but there's just the population so big. But I don't know if you know Arjun Nimala, but he
Yeah.
was drafted by the Blue Jays in 2023, so he
Yeah.
might be the first.
I remember that because Arjun is from the same part of India I am, and his family's from a city called Vijayawada, which I have family in, and they speak the same language that we do. So not only is he Indian, he's not North Indian, he's South Indian, which in the history of India, the British settled in the north, and so there were more opportunities for people that lived in the north versus the people lived in the south. There's also some ethnic differences, not just in clothing and food. We eat a lot hotter food in the south, spicier food, more rice-based food, and in the north it's a lot creamier stuff and more breads and things, and some differences. They have more of the Mughal influence was more in the north, in their food and their architecture and everything. In the south, we're Dravidian origin, we're darker, and so some real differences. And in general, the more opportunities were given to the people of the north than the south. And for example, my cousin I was telling you about, who was in charge of the World Cup, he was the very first South Indian or man from Andhra Pradesh, which was the state we were from, to be the Director General of the SPG, the Special Protection Group, which is the Secret Service for India. So Prime Minister Security and so forth. And he was the very first South Indian to have achieved that. So it was a big deal. So I heard about Mullah. But I don't think he ever played in a major game, right? I mean, I think
He's not made it to the majors, no. But he was a first round draft pick, so he's still got some time. He's still got some time.
He grew up in Florida, though.
What's that?
He grew up in Florida, though. He's a Florida kid.
Oh, is that? I did not realize.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think somewhere around Bradenton, but he's of Indian origin. But did you ever see the movie $1 Million Arm?
I'm familiar with it. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I have to watch that. So there were two. So they had this big competition in India. 37,000 people came out to try out for major league U.S. teams, and it was mostly cricket players, as pitchers. And there were two guys that Dinesh Patel and Rinku Singh, who made it to the Pirates as pitchers, but they also just played for the Pirates field team or farm team, and didn't really make it to the Pirates roster to play in any major league game. So as far as I know, no.
So was that movie based on a true story?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Cool.
It was.
Yeah, I remember when it came out, but no, that's one of the few baseball movies I haven't. I'll have to get that on my list.
Yeah,
it's pretty good. It's pretty good, Jack. I think you'll enjoy it. Hey, Jack. I think it might be time for word association. I'm going to start off. Dr. Samarko, I'm going to throw one at you. I don't know if you remember this fellow, but his name was Dusty Baker.
Sure, manager. He was a character. I think I have some great memories of him, and I think he did really well. I think a lot of people had a lot of respect for him, and carried himself with class, and just above the fray. And I think he was pretty eloquent, and I think he did great.
Johnny Bench.
Oh my gosh. Johnny Bench, very successful businessman. I think he was a lot more, I wouldn't say a lot quieter, but just more in the background of a lot of that big red machine, even though he was such a great player and he inspired so many kids. And I think, being part of the Cincinnati community, so many fans that continue to this day to admire him. And so I think he was a great credit to our community.
Marty Brenneman.
Oh, Marty. Oh, my God. I mean, such a voice of baseball. I remember meeting him personally about 5 years ago before he retired. And I was there for the retirement banquet and the fun that we had at the stadium. I mean, I can't think of listening to a Reds game without that voice in my head. You know, he was always there. Joe Nuxall and Marty Brenneman.
No doubt, no doubt. How about Sparky?
Sparky was all class, I thought. I mean, I loved when he came out and broke away from that sort of, contained and, watchful thing. I thought he was a great manager, and I thought he had such rapport with the team and the players. And I think he was very well respected in baseball, period, across all the teams. And I think he was a credit to our team. So
Sparky always seemed like he was the same age to me. Like he was always about 60-something years old. I mean, you see pictures of him in 1970, and his hair was already gray, but he was 36 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, and now 36 seems so young to me. So.
Jack, that's what people say about me. I was bald when I was 30, and they thought I was 60, and they tell me I haven't aged one bit. I don't know. Hey, Doctor, how about Rosie Red?
Rosie Red, our mascot?
Yeah.
I think she's one of those, my daughter absolutely loves her, and there was that whole, I'm wearing a skirt to the baseball game thing. I mean, it came from Rosie. And I think that, for women, for girls that love baseball, I think that says, hey, doesn't matter what sex you are. Baseball is an across the board sport for everybody. We can all play baseball. We can all love baseball. We can all go to the games and enjoy and scream and yell. And, it's not about massive strength and, it's about coordination. It's about a great eye. It's about being able to hit the ball, whether you're playing baseball or softball. And, I know we had this great exhibit at the Hall of Fame about women in baseball. And I know there was one that made it to the MLB, at one time in Chicago. And I think that, I think that we need more of that. And I love the fact that Rosie can be Rosie and can be a girl and can be in a skirt and can be out on the field.
I saw something online the other day. I think it was Sheryl Sandberg was holding up this thing and said, if you're a little girl and they tell you you're bossy, tell them you have leadership skills. And I sent that to my daughter, my oldest daughter, who was a little bossy, and her daughter, Lucy, is my daughter, Katie Robank, said Lucy has a lot of leadership skills.
There's it's funny because there's a lot being said about where women are today compared to where women were 30 years ago. And even for me, having graduated from medical school more than 30 years ago, there weren't as many. There were 16%, I think, of my medical school class was women. Nowadays, I think it's more than 50%. Mm-hmm. And my daughter's in medical school at Case Western, and I think their class is more than 50% women. And just that message that, and this is something I've spoken about before. You don't have to model yourself as masculine in any way, shape, or form to be considered a leader or to gain respect. But you do have to comport yourself. You have to be comfortable in your skin. You have to comport yourself in an appropriate way. And the respect doesn't come from what you're wearing, doesn't come from, what you've achieved necessarily, but what you've achieved against the odds. But it's how you treat other people. And I think it's how you lift other people and how you lead. And you don't have to be male or female for that, And I think that that message is getting out there. And being bossy. Do you think I wasn't called bossy? Oh my God. You ask my little brother. He'll go around and tell you how bossy I was, all our lives. And my parents will say that too. So, there's bossy. And then there's like, if there's a vacuum, I'm going to take the lead.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
I have no doubt if there was a vacuum who took the lead in the having spent this time with you, Doctor. I mean that as a compliment for sure.
Doctor,
Appreciate
you're a
it.
very positive person, it seems, very optimistic. And I suppose that's how you've maintained your allegiance to the Reds through thick and thin over the years.
True.
Yeah.
We're gonna have
Yeah,
a
how do you keep up the enthusiasm? Help us, as fans, because this has been somewhat of a. It's funny that your first game was in 1971, which was a disappointing season, between 70 and 72, and this has been a disappointing season. So, how do we keep our enthusiasm?
because
Help us, Doctor.
I have great memories of the team. I love being part of that Reds opening day parade. This town is about baseball. It's about the Reds, and we have some amazing talent on our team. And I mean amazing. And they're so much fun to watch. I mean, how could you not watch? Not just Ellie, but I was watching all the young ones out there, Matt McClain, all these guys, and they're everybody has moments and they do fun things. We did the Viking helmet thing, and we did, there's all sorts of stuff that I think baseball just as a sport in our community, there's something instead of looking at, okay, it's been a miserable season, look at what it's done. And, the Reds have done all sorts of things, even locally, through the Hall of Fame and the foundation. And I think that how baseball has contributed to the pride of the city, not this season necessarily, but we have great history and we have great players. And I still think Pete belongs in the Hall of Fame.
There you go.
Hey,
Well,
that's
that's probably a great
yeah.
that's probably a great note to end it on today. We've taken up a lot of your time, and I know you're busy, so we sure appreciate you spending time with us, Doctor. This was
Oh,
really
it's a
fun.
pleasure. Love talking about my team.
All right.
Well, thank you very much. It's been awesome. Hang with us a little bit here while we get the studio audience involved.
There we
There
go.
we go. Hey, Dr. Samarco, the greatest corner in Hamilton County history.
And just so you know, it's way louder than that. 9/11/05.
Hey, for our viewers watching on YouTube, they'll really appreciate your background this morning. That's beautiful. So thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
The whole town's batting about Cincinnati. What a team, what a team, what a team. Each man and lady from 1 to 80, how they scream, how they scream, how they scream.